Bonjour, mes amis. It is with greatest pride and deepest pleasure that I welcome you tonight. And now, I invite you to relax, pull up a chair, as I proudly present the review of Gay Purr-ee. You'll have to pardon my French accent. It's a way of getting into character, since I'm going to be talking about a film, that being Gay Purr-ee, that was released in 1962 and takes place in beautiful Paris, excuse me, Paris, France. You see, this film was released by Warner Brothers, but it was produced by United Productions of America, who you might be familiar with if you know the history of Mr. Magoo. The film did gain pretty good positive reviews, as well as being the film debut of the one and only Robert Goulet, but ultimately the film was a box office disappointment. Ultimately, not only was this the first theatrical film released by Warner Brothers, but it was the second of only 2 animated films made by the UPA, because after this, well, my research may be wrong here, but they most likely disbanded afterwards. But anyway, what's the story about this? The film takes place in the year 1895 in France, predominantly in Paris, but actually on a farm in rural province. The story focuses on a cat by the name of Musette, and the accomplished but shy mouser by the name of Juan or Jeune, or whatever you say, but he prefers to be called Tom. But of course, it's the basic. From there, it goes on to a basic story of cat meets cat, cat loses cat, and cat gets cat. I think that's how it goes. I haven't seen this movie myself, but it is rather interesting for a film to take place in 1895 because in France specifically, because in 1889, just about 6 years prior, France actually became famous for a tower that was recently built there. You might know it. A little thing called the Eiffel Tower. But it's basically your typical musical, anime musical romance story. More anime musical, less romance. Now, what about the voices? Well, there's Judy Garland, who plays Musette, a beautiful white Turkish Angora cat, idealistic and naive, kind and demure, and is a strong believer in herself. You've got Robert Goulet, who, again, this was his first big film production. He actually got the chance to play the part of Jeune or Juan Tom, whatever, a handsome orange tabby cat, hot-headed, not too bright, selfless, devoted, brave, and strong-willed. Then you've got Red Buttons. Yeah, I'm serious. Someone named Red Buttons playing Robespierre, a young black cat, and Juan Tom's best friend, Paul Frees as Meowris, Hermione Gingold as Ruben Chatte, Maury Amsterdam as the narrator, Mel Blanc, who was the voice of Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, countless Looney Tunes and Hanna-Barbera characters, as a bulldog, the Mellowmen, who were a very popular music group at the time, playing Meowris's business partners, their singing voices at least, Julie Bennett and Joan Gardner as the two ladies from Provence, respectively, possibly one of the few humans in this movie, and the one and only Thor Ravenscroft, who you might remember as the voice of Tony the Tiger, as a singing hench cat. Unfortunately, he didn't get any notoriety in this film, but he would years later when he played in a certain Dr. Seuss animated special, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Now, what happened behind the scenes for this film? Well, like I said, Gay Purr-ee was the second and final feature film produced by the United Productions of America, or UPA. Their first one was 1001 Mr. Night, 1001 Arabian Nights, excuse me. Ultimately, UPA was best known as a studio that revolutionized animation during the 50s by incorporating design and limited animation, which I'm honestly not too big a fan of. I'm more used to the fully articulated animation you would see in Disney films, but limited animation, I'm not really all down for it. Shows in the 60s that use limited animation, they're okay, but not exactly my cup of tea. Anyway, the script for the movie was written by one Dorothy Webster Jones. Ultimately, she happened to be the wife of Warner Bros. Cartoons veteran Chuck Jones. You might recognize that name. He was the creator of Tom and Jerry and quite a few other cartoon characters. Ultimately, UPA ended up getting under fire for violating Chuck Jones' exclusive contract with Warner Brothers. He got in a lot of trouble for it, he really did. One of the former animators of Chuck Jones' animation unit was Abe Levito. He was the one who directed this movie. Now, according to the production notes seen on the DVD edition of this movie, it was actually Garland. Yes, it was a man named Garland. Judy Garland, who actually suggested that the songwriters for the Wizard of Oz, yes, that Wizard of Oz from the 1939 feature film, the songwriters Harold Arlen and E.Y. Harburg, Miss Garland suggested that her songwriters from that film would come and compose songs for Gay Purr-ee, or Purr-ee, my mistake. Anyway, Warner Brothers ended up picking up the film for distribution, but then they discovered that Chuck Jones was working on this. After a long debate with management over the details of Jones' exclusivity agreement, which meant that he was to work with Warner Brothers and only Warner Brothers, ultimately Chuck Jones was fired in July of 1962, and his staff was laid off after they had finished their next cartoon. Whatever it was, I'm not sure. Ultimately, after Warner Brothers cartoons went belly up, Jones hired his old animation unit for his independent studio, Sib Tower 12 Productions, which would become part of MGM, or MGM Animation / Visual Arts. Now, the film was theatrically released on December 17th, 1962, just in time for the holiday season, to positive reviews from critics who praised Ms. Garland's performance, but ultimately, it was a box office flop. I'm not sure how much money it cost to make the film, but it definitely did not make it all back. But it's definitely a rare piece of history. Definitely a movie worth checking out if you're a fan of Warner Brothers. I haven't seen it yet, but I might take time out of my day to see it. I mean, if it's made by the guy who created Tom and Jerry and who knows how many other Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers cartoons, I would definitely say it's worth at least one look. It's not noteworthy. Well, it kind of is since it's UPA's final film. But I definitely say it's worth a view at least once, maybe twice. And so without further ado, thank you all for watching this video, and definitely remember to like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, and stay tuned because we're nearing the end of the 1962 theatrical year for animated films. The last one's going to be a bit of a Christmas special. That's right, we're going to be talking about the very first ever TV film. Definitely stay tuned for that. Until then, stay animated, and I'll see you all next time.